でこれでもう録画スタートです。でこれで放っておけばハードディスクに一応3時間分バーッと入るんですね、まあでも3時間は取らないでしょうからね、でこれでストップします。レコーディング中、録画中ですね。でここで、はい、これで録画いきますね。あとズームやったりして、あんま近づけると取れますけど、ズームも広角10倍なんで十分ですね。でこれで、もうこれで録画スタート。今ハードディスクに録画してますね。でもう一回赤ボタン押してください。でまた録画ね。はい。で録画して、で止めて。
Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life, that there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. Do you know what I'm talking about? The Matrix? Do you want to know what it is? The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. Even now, in this very room. You can see it when you look out your window or when you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. What truth? That you are a slave, Neo. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch. A prison for your mind.
People realized that processing speed of computers was increasing exponentially. Every year, every few years, every 18 months, the processing speed would double.
If this trend was to continue unabated, it would mean computers would get ever faster and ever more powerful. So much so that in the far future, a super civilization would have computers which make ours look puny.
Imagine this occurring faster and faster. If that were to occur, it would be possible to process an infinite amount of information.
It was this infinite computing power, Tipler said, which would allow a future civilization to travel in time. They'd do it using virtual reality. The images computers can create have improved hugely over the last 30 years. But many physicists believe eventually computers will be able to make virtual images which are so good they'd be indistinguishable from reality. They'd be exact copies of the real world down to the last particle.
In the distant future, simulating physical systems with very high accuracy so that they look perfectly real to the user of the virtual reality will become commonplace and trivial.
But what if a future civilization wasn't just able to create images of fictional events? What if instead they could create images of their own real past? Then they'd be able to make exact three-dimensional copies of events and places in our time. These simulations would be populated by beings identical to us. They'd feel like us. They'd have thoughts just like us. They'd even think they were us. Our future descendants could then use these images to find out about their past. They'd have a time machine, but they wouldn't need to travel to the past. They'd bring the past to them.
So imagine an advanced civilization, and suppose that I want to visit the past. It might turn out not to be possible to build a time machine and actually go back into the past. Physics might simply not permit that. There is a second way in which they could get the experience of living in the past. And that would be by creating a very detailed and realistic simulation of the past.
The notion computers might one day be used to create exact copies of the past might seem like a wild intellectual exercise. But a new generation of believers in time travel have taken the idea to its own wild intellectual conclusion. And they've pointed out that a super civilization wouldn't just make one perfect simulation of the past.
An advanced civilization would have enough computing power that even if it devoted only a tiny fraction of 1% of that computing power for just 1 second in the course of its maybe 1,000 years long existence, that would be enough to create billions and billions of ancestor simulations.
Every time science has thought it has found a way to control time, it's been forced to confront a worrying implication. This latest solution is no exception, because it too turns out to have a bitter twist. One dictated by the laws of mathematical probability. If the computer of the future is churning out billions of simulations, how do we know we are living in the original real world and not one of the billions of copies? In fact, the odds against us being real are billions to 1 against.
There would be a lot more simulated people like you than there would be original non-simulated ones. And then you gotta think, hang on, if almost everybody like me are simulated people, and just a tiny minority are non-simulated ones, then I'm probably one of the simulated ones, rather than one of the exceptional non-simulated ones. In other words, you're almost certainly living in an ancestor simulation, right now.
I know you're out there. I can feel you now. I know that you're afraid. You're afraid of us. You're afraid of change. I don't know the future. I didn't come here to tell you how this is going to end. I came here to tell you how it's going to begin. I'm going to hang up this phone, and then I'm going to show these people what you don't want them to see. I'm going to show them a world without you. A world without rules, controls, without orders.
President Medvedev and I began this process in London, and will seek a new agreement by the end of this year that is legally binding and sufficiently bold. And this will set the stage for further cuts, and we will seek to include all nuclear weapon states in this endeavor. To achieve a global ban on nuclear testing, my administration will immediately and aggressively pursue U.S. ratification of the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty.
No warning signs that I'm aware of.
And it was a revelation that the White House had no intention of making public.
President Bush was told in August that Osama bin Laden might be planning an attack involving the hijacking.
Could have predicted.
Nobody in our government, at least.
August 6th PDP.
I believe the title was Bin Laden Determined to Attack Inside the United States. 70% of family members' questions were never answered during the 9/11 Commission report.
Lee Hamilton and Thomas Keane said they were set up to fail.
I mean, I'm a member of the commission. It's a scam. It's absolutely disgusting.
The questions, Mr. President, the questions. Be on the right side of history.
Are you now saying that they weren't asking to block an investigation?
An investigation must not interfere with the ongoing efforts to prevent the next attack.
Senator Tom Daschle said last week that you called him several times and urged him not to investigate the events of September 11th.
Tom's wrong. He has, I think, in this case, let's say a misinterpretation.